Welcome back to the Raising Rock podcast. I'm Elise and I am your host. Today we have Kristi Clover on the podcast. She is a dear friend. I've known her for many years and she's actually a big part of why we homeschool and has been a big story in our homeschool journey. I learned so much in this episode, everything from daily rhythms, how to homeschool if you work full-time and still are passionate about it, Christian worldview, curriculum, the list goes on and on. If you are even somewhat curious about homeschooling, this episode is for you. Please also check out KristiClover.com. She has been super generous and has given all of our listeners the discount of Clover 10, which will get you a discount at checkout on her homeschool course, which I will be taking as I prepare for our 25-26 homeschool year. So with that, please enjoy the episode. All right, welcome, Kristi, to the Raising Rock podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be so fun. Really quick, how Kristi and I know each other. She was a big part of the reason that I started homeschooling my kids. She went to the church that we were going to at the time and I'll let her tell her story about all of her kids, but 5 amazing children. And I'm like, I want whatever it is that she is doing because she's doing it right. So what's that special sauce? And so she really mentored me in my journey as a new homeschool mom. And we haven't talked a lot in the last year or so. So I'm so excited to catch up and dive into her homeschool journey and share it with all of you. Kristi, with that, tell us a little bit about your family and your background, and then we'll kind of dive into homeschool specific from there.
Yes. So my journey and my family. So my husband, Steve, and I have been married for about 27 years now. And wow. So that I know, right? I'm like, milestones. I remember back in the day when like people were married 2 years. I'm like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But fast forward, we have 5 kids. We have 2 adult children who are now out of the house. So Grant's actually married. And so that's really exciting. Then he's working in the writing industry and marketing industry. And then my second son, Blake, is a professional photographer. And so they are off and thriving. Our little homeschool experiment worked and they are thriving adults. So it's very exciting from that standpoint just to see kind of homeschooling all the way to the end. So we've been homeschooling for over 15 years now. We still have 3 kids at home. Wade is 17 and is going to be a senior this year. So I'm getting ready to graduate my 3rd through our homeschool. Then we still have 2 little girls. So I'm still in the world of homeschooling and will be for a while. My 2 girls are 13 and 11. So Ashton and Caitlin. So that's our family. And then kind of about 10 years ago, I decided to start a little hobby of blogging, which turned into not just a blog, but a YouTube channel. And I started speaking on homeschooling, started a podcast called Simply Joyful, and then have written a few books. My last book was actually MOM, Master Organizer of Mayhem. And then I have a Homeschool Basics book as well. Kind of done a lot of different things through the years.
You are, when I introduced you as whatever you're doing, I want it. You just perfectly recapped why. I mean, your kids are so well educated and so intelligent and doing amazing things. And you're so accomplished with your books and your blog, like everything. Everything you touch turns to gold. So good on you.
Aw, you're so sweet. I will make this caveat. I don't do everything all at the same time. So like when I was podcasting, I wasn't doing much of anything else. And when I was writing the books, I would take a break from everything else. So I do one thing. So I just want to make sure, because it always sounds like she's done a lot, but I do a lot but all at one time. Just like one at a time. So just tiny little things at one time.
Thank you for saying that, because I think as women, it's really hard for us to not compare ourselves and the path that we're on to the path that other women and moms are on, and to see, oh, she's doing everything at once. She's doing it all at the same. It's like, no, she's doing one thing. She's not doing all the things. And I'm finding myself in that hamster wheel right now, to be totally honest, of we're trying to get Raising Rock off the ground. We're trying to get the podcast off the ground. There's other things coming that we haven't totally released yet that we're trying to get off the ground. I'm overseeing homeschool, which I say overseeing for a reason. I'll kind of get into that with you in a second. But I'm overseeing our homeschool journey. Plus I'm trying to disciple my kids. Plus I'm trying to be a wife. And I'm like, okay, Plus, I'm trying to lose weight and do all the things. Like, there's all these things. And I'm like, okay, I can't. I was literally just talking to my mom. I need to start really prioritizing things. Like, I can't do it all at once. Yes. Like, I quit my job for a reason. I need to stay focused on, I'm home with my kids. I'm discipling my kids. That's my number one priority, and not get pulled into all these other things.
Yeah, no, that is one of my biggest pieces of advice to young moms, especially, is that it's so easy to look at what everybody else is doing. It's also hard because I think part of motherhood is we kind of defer some of our dreams sometimes, and we defer certain things, and we kind of reach this point of, what do I do with that? What do I do with this energy? What do I do with these ideas? And so again, like picking that one thing. And I have a different way of approaching things when it comes to prioritizing. Most people try to figure out like, what on my plate should I keep? I like to try to tell people to take everything off the plate and start with an empty plate, and then put back what's most important, one thing at a time, until you can look at it and be like, okay, this is all I can do right now. And so what I've also learned to do is just really pray through it and pray with my husband, because it's hard to do too many things. And it's easy for the too many things to kind of creep in all at once, which is why I went through a season of burnout. And so I've actually spent the last 4 or 5 years really pulling back from all things online, all things my little hobby business ministry. So I'm just kind of slowly but surely bringing myself back in and making sure my priorities are really straight. So that's my warning light for young moms, is it's easy to say yes to a couple things, but what happened to me and my part of my journey, especially with online business, was that my yeses were strategic, and somehow they all hit at one time. Like some things were delayed, other things were pushed forward. And I was like, why is everything happening at once? Yeah. So it was kind of a crazy season.
God is so good that you're my guest today and that we're having this conversation, because I'm really struggling with that. And it's really been like this week, it's all kind of bubbling up. Not that everything is happening at once, but I think all the emotions are hitting at once. Of like, there were some behavioral challenges with Benji at VBS this week. I kind of alluded to that in our text messages. And I found like our pattern as a family is these things tend to bubble up behaviorally with the kids when I'm not giving them the attention that they need. And it's kind of like their cry for like, hey mom, like, hi, we're right here. Come back, come back. And so it's just been a really humbling week of, there is too much on the plate. I am too spread thin. And then I get mad at myself because I'm like, hey, I did this to myself. Like, I quit my job 2 years ago for a reason. And here I am filling up the plate again. And I love the idea of just taking everything off. That's how my husband cleans out the garage. He takes everything out of the garage. And it drives me nuts at first because I'm like, wait, it looks way worse right now than it did 2 hours ago. But then he strategically puts everything back in based on what we need to keep, and puts the most important things where they need to be, and all of that.
Oh yeah, that is my technique, is empty it out, clean it out. And so I am with him. Go Scott.
Empty it out, clean it out, and start with a clean plate. I love it.
That's right.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about your kids and who you've homeschooled and all of that. Where did your desire to homeschool start? Did you always know you would homeschool? Did you have a public school bad experience that led you to homeschool?
Yeah, so my journey was kind of interesting. We did a lot of different things kind of leading up to homeschooling. At the beginning of our child experience, I guess, is that like when my oldest two hit school-ish age, like preschool age, we were going to a church that had a preschool attached to it. So everybody else is sticking their kids in this private Montessori style preschool. So we're like, sure, let's do that. And so we did that for a little while. And then I kind of did have this itch to homeschool. And one day we were at the park and there were school age kids there. And I'm like, those kids must homeschool. I went over, found their moms, and started asking them questions. So when Grant and Blake were, I think at the time, they were either 4 and 3 or 3 and 4. I mean, sorry, saying that the wrong way. But
same thing.
Either 3 and 4 or 2 and 3. So they were still preschool age. And what I did is, after talking to these moms, I got involved with a co-op that they were part of. And I decided, and this is what I caution people on, is that at this preschool age, I took our kids, I waited for summer, and then I didn't put the kids back into the private Christian preschool. I decided to try and test out what it would be like to homeschool, because I figured before we actually officially had to homeschool, I should try it. And so I bought a lot of curriculum for my preschool age children, and I tried to do school with them. And that was just a hot mess of a disaster. So I warn everyone, like, don't do that. Just enjoy. Let learning be fun. I call it sneaky school now, where we do things that are educational when they're little and they don't always know they're learning. So that's what I try to encourage people in. But so that was my story. I totally failed, flopped at that, put them back into the private Christian preschool. And then the following year was time for Grant to start school. He'd reached that age. And so I was like, okay, should I homeschool? I was pregnant. So I was like, no one starts homeschooling when they are having a newborn or pregnant. So I chickened out, put him in a public school that was close to us. I actually interviewed the sweet teacher, and she was amazing. And I decided to have him there. So we tried out public school, and then we had little Wade. And so we had our third boy. And then what happened at that point was that whole next summer, I really just felt like, oh my goodness, I think we're supposed to be homeschooling. And it just so happened that two really big name people in the homeschool community ended up being guest speakers at our church. And I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be homeschooling. But then I'm like, okay, I'll interview this new school, because we had moved, and I'll interview them and see if we get these two teachers that I know are Christians, then I'll let my two boys, because we're going to be going into kindergarten, first grade, I'll let them do public school. So we put them both into public school, and a couple weeks into it, I was like, I just knew it. I just felt like the Lord was like, Kristi, it doesn't matter. I'm going to align everything perfectly, and you have to make the decision. I ended up a couple weeks into it. I remember calling Steve. He was on the road, and I'm like, we're supposed to homeschool. I think I need to pull the boys out. And so that's what I did. 8 weeks into kindergarten and first grade, I pulled my boys out of public school, and we started our homeschool journey. And the rest has been history. So none of my younger kids have set foot in any other kind of schooling other than our homeschool. Yeah, my first did 1 year and 8 weeks, and my second did like 8 weeks of public school. And that's it. So we've been homeschooling all the way since.
Wow. So cool. You've been really bold on your channels and sharing with people the differences between what I will call like regular homeschool and what you call private homeschool. And there's a differentiation. So would you educate the audience on, and for those not watching, I'm like air quoting regular homeschool, like what's regular homeschool versus what you've chosen to do, which is private homeschooling?
Yes, there are really, and I'll speak to the state of California. I actually speak across the country on homeschooling and how to get started. So homeschooling is different here in California in that we have the option to have our children in public school or in private school. And so those are our two educational choices. And within those two educational choices, there's actually two more little tiers that we can do. So we can either have our child in a normal public school setting, or we can do charter schools. And charter schools are a public school that you receive funding to help offset the cost of doing sometimes school at home. Sometimes there's class, like half classes, half school time. So that's charter schooling. And then we also have private schools, as you would imagine. Most people are familiar with private schools, and private homeschooling. Now, in most states nationwide, it's really just homeschooling is the private homeschool. When you're saying regular school, I don't know how you define that. Like regular homeschooling, it can be it looks different for every family, but nationwide, most families are doing the equivalent of what we would call here private homeschooling, because there is no government funding. But
so that's a California specific. That's a California specific differentiation. In California, you can homeschool, the regular homeschool, with charter funds, or you can completely privately homeschool, which is what you've done. But the rest of the United States, the rest of the United States would just be their regular homeschooling. They don't know any different. There's no charters Is that, am I
Not always.
tracking?
And sometimes they're called different things. So I know I was talking with Heidi St. John, and they don't call their public funding charters. They have different names. So several states do have, so I don't want to say that there's no funding allowed. There are funding, but they're all through, anytime the government gives you money, there's oversight. And so that's that's why it falls under the public school umbrella. So you're still required to use those public funds for the state approved curriculum. So if that makes sense. So really,
so with the more accurate,
saying like regular homeschooling, I would actually kind of say that for years, it really has only been in the last maybe 8 years that charter schools have really taken off, and it has become more of a word that people are using homeschooling with. So when you're saying regular homeschooling, I would say regular homeschooling had forever been private homeschooling, and now it's really, in California, we're seeing such a huge shift over to, or kind of uprising, I shouldn't say shift, we're seeing a big uprising of people starting off and doing home educating using charter funds. So just to differentiate there. So it's not that you're regularly homeschooling is not private homeschooling. So private homeschooling and charter school homeschooling, they both kind of, they are home education. So we'll say it like that, I guess, if that makes sense.
Would it be fair to say basically like public homeschool and private homeschool? Like if you had to put it into camps, like would that be a fair way of describing it? So you're still homeschooling, but you're using public funding and public charters, or there's private homeschooling where there isn't oversight and it's done totally privately.
Yeah, and I guess a way to even look at it is that, because I know a lot of people think, oh, like Christian schools, that kind of thing, where you have to understand that not everyone who homeschools is a Christian. I know that you and I share the Christian faith, but like I'll talk to people all the time and they are homeschooling for different reasons, whether it's using charter funds or their own personal finances to homeschool. So regardless of how they're doing it, but they're educating their children on their own. And I think you and I both agree that the big heart behind it, like my reason for homeschooling. And I mean, I always kind of joke that I have a lot of different reasons of like when people say, why do you homeschool? But my big one is that just the discipleship of my children, I believe is mine. And so like that responsibility falls on me. And so that's why in our family, we've chosen homeschooling to do that. And so I have just loved it. And with private homeschooling, it's allowed me to really pick whatever curriculum I want to use that. And so we've been able to actually use a lot of really beautiful Christian work. We do a little bit of what you might call unschooling and kind of fun schooling here and there. So we have a lot more flexibility in what we're allowed to do. But at the same time, I know I want to make sure that I'm clear. Like I believe in school choice. And I think that when people do choose to use charter funds, hey, it is great because parents are starting to take a look at, and you have the ability to see what your kids are being taught.
That's awesome. And what really made you make the decision to not go the charter route and to go the private homeschool route?
Yeah, so my sister-in-law actually went through a charter. So when we first started homeschooling, we had been thinking about using a charter school, and we kind of looked into all the different avenues. And I remember my co-op at the time, it was a lot of private homeschooling families that were like, Kristi, don't use a charter. I'm like, why? And they're like, it's actually extra work. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And so they're like, no, because you remember you said you wanted to use this curriculum. You can't use that when you do charter. And I was like, really? And so we're going back and forth. I'm like, I don't understand. And so we talked to a few private schools. I talked to a few of the charters that were open at the time, and they've changed names here and there. But so we were talking with charter schools. I was talking with what's called a PSP, which stands for Private Satellite School Program. I think that's what it's called. So I think here locally in San Diego, that's like Heart Academy. So they are a private homeschool. So they support private homeschool families, and they will hold your records. They will file the affidavit for you. In California, we are required to have our child's name on an affidavit. So as a private homeschool family, I fill out my own affidavit. If your child's a part of a public school, then that public school is taking care of that. If you're part of, again, a PSP, then they're filing for your child. And so that's where your child's records are being kept. So I keep my children's records, whereas other schooling, they'll keep records elsewhere. So anyway, we were really looking at a lot of different options. And so we found ourselves at a homeschool convention which that is one of my biggest tips for families who are thinking about homeschooling or just getting started and want to homeschool. Get yourself to a homeschool convention. They are fabulous. You will find your people there, and you will find so much great information to help you get started. The one that I participate in every year, and you will find me there speaking, is at CHIA, which is Christian Home Educators Association. But so we were at CHIA like forever ago, and I went over and we were just kind of talking through options with an organization called HSLDA, which there's so much Christianese, I'm throwing them all at you, but that stands for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And we were just kind of talking to somebody there at the table, and it was really powerful. And again, this is our family story, but we were telling them that they're like, why do you want to homeschool? And like, we want to, and I found this is the easiest way to say that we wanted a private school education for our kids at a fraction of the cost. So we really wanted to have Christian curriculum be at the heart of everything we did. And so the person from HSLDA, they're like, yeah, but legally you can't do that with charter funds. I'm like, yeah, but they told us we can turn in samples and things like that. And they're like, and this is what was told to me, and this is what helped us to make our decision, is that they just said, kind of depends on, do you want to live your life above reproach? And my husband and I kind of sat there with our mouths open going, oh my gosh. Because at the time, that's what our charter school was telling us to do if we wanted to approach Christian education using a charter school. So we kind of went back to the drawing board and kind of decided, like, do we want to use the material that they're offering? And so we were looking at that option, because that's what my sister-in-law did for years, is she used all of the curriculum that they had, that they were offering. And there's some great curriculum, and there's some, from a Christian standpoint, there's some not as scary curriculum out there, because we all hear the horror stories about what's being taught in the public schools. So there is some not horrible stuff being taught or that available to use for curriculum. Or were we going to go ahead and invest in Christian curriculum? So for us, we decided to do the private school route, and we decided to go ahead and pay for our own curriculum to do that. And we've been doing it ever since. But again, I have a lot of friends who have chosen the charter route, and I love helping people try to find ways to supplement within, because you have to turn in samples. So you want to be using whatever curriculum they give you, but there's so many great things you can be doing on the side, great books. So that's one of, again, my passions, is not just to help people start homeschooling, but also to help people, no matter where their kids are, to really start enriching their educational experience, help them to help their kids have a love for learning and a love for God, which comes with really learning how to teach your children to have a Christian worldview. And that's really important if you have your kids, I mean, even at a public or a private school, I would say, but if you have your kids in a public school, that it's very important for it to all kind of be at the heart of your home. And that is bringing in Bible teaching and other great bits of literature, whether it's like you're picking books that just have this beautiful heart to a story that teaches a moral that you can pull into biblical teaching. Then hopefully that kind of explains kind of where we came from and how we made our decision.
Yeah, that's great. So you're passionate about Christian worldview, regardless of how you homeschool, if you homeschool. What does that term mean to you, and how have you incorporated that into your mission, your home, all of that?
Yeah, in life, everyone is going to have a worldview. And so I think it's pretty safe to say that in the public school and just in the world in general, they are not kind of trying to instill Christian values. And for our family, that's really important. So having a Christian worldview for our family means that we are trying to help our kids look at life through a Christian biblical lens. So we teach creation science here at home. So creation started with the Garden of Eden. It started with God, the 7 days of creation, I guess 6 days of creation. But so we're starting there when we start our history books. So we're starting with creation. We try to help them see what the world looks like through a God lens. So we're like, our history is us trying to show them God's story. So his story that is just weaved throughout history. And so much of that has been taken out of our educational books. It's just crazy how history has literally skipped over some things and some stories that are a rich part of, especially our American history. I mean, it's hard to really learn some of the stories about how we became a nation without seeing God's hand all over it. There's a story about George Washington where he had gone into battle. And he had bullet holes in his jacket, and he would have horses shot out from under him, but he would not be harmed at all. And years later, I think it was right before he became president or when he became president, this old Indian chief wanted to meet him. And he said, Mr. President, I think it was a president, Mr. President, I could see the hand of providence over you because I had my best marksman and I myself were trying to get to you and we were hitting you and you were not going down. So it was just amazing. This Indian chief saw this. So these are the stories that have been taken out of our history books. There's conversations between presidents and their wives writing back about things that are just amazing. So like John Adams and Abigail Adams have some just really encouraging, beautiful, but they're all talking about the Lord and what the Lord is doing. So that's what I mean when I say a Christian worldview is I want our kids to see the whole picture. I want them to learn, because I'm actually a science major, so I want them to learn about science and how God designed us, how God designed the world around us and how he designed it so amazing to work so well. If we'd been any closer to the sun, we would burn up. If we're any further away from the sun, we would freeze. So God just has such a purpose and a plan. So that's really that's what I teach it in co-ops. That's how I teach my kids here at home, that we've really brought in a lot of beauty into our homeschool through great literature as well.
That's amazing. You're inspiring me. I've struggled with our own homeschool journey. I love it. So let me preface it with I would not trade homeschooling for anything, but it's been a journey. So Luke is going into 3rd grade. Benji is starting kindergarten. And
I can't believe your kids are that old already.
I know. Isn't that weird? I feel like we started talking about it before Luke was in preschool. So he's going into 3rd grade. Benji's going into kindergarten. And I don't have a passion for teaching. That is not something that just lights my fire. I'm passionate about a Christian worldview. I'm passionate about discipling my kids, but I'm not passionate about math and teaching math and all the things that come along with homeschooling. So the group that we found ourselves in now is we have a tutor that helps with the heavy lifting with those subjects that I either don't have the passion for or don't feel equipped or whatever. So she helps with that. And then we do use charter funds, and he takes electives and classes at a local, I call it a co-op. I don't think you would probably call it a co-op, but I don't know what you would call it, a resource center.
It's a resource. Yeah, it's a
homeschool enrichment center.
That's perfect. Yes. Yeah,
that's what it is. A homeschool enrichment center. And so he's taking the supplement classes there. But as I hear you talking about it, I'm just feeling a lot of conviction about the curriculum that we use, because we're not using Christian curriculum because we are at a public charter. And so we're not using Christian curriculum. There's nothing wacky in the curriculum that we're using. It's really based. I mean, I have math curriculum from the 90s. So there's nothing wonky in it, but it's not Christian curriculum. And it's just convicting to me that we homeschool for a reason, but we aren't totally doing it the right way. And so I'm sure I'm not the only one like this. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's listening to you talk going, gosh, I could be doing better. I could be really discipling my kids from an educational perspective better. I didn't know any of those stories you talked about with George Washington and Abigail Adams. And I'm like, those are beautiful. I want Luke to learn those messages, but he's not going to learn those the way we're doing it. And so for someone like me who is intimidated with the actual teaching of it, who doesn't feel equipped, who struggles kind of getting into daily rhythms for schooling, how would you encourage someone like me to really dive into this?
Okay, number one, grace upon grace. So I think that we all have to answer the call. We are all accountable to the Lord and not to each other. I am no one's Holy Spirit. So I just want to say that if you stepped into any day in our homeschool, you would see it's messy at times. Sometimes I'm that was a good homeschool day. There's other days where I'm we got nothing done. I'm what am I doing speaking on homeschooling? One big thing for me, and I will say, is that I pick my homeschool curriculum when I first started homeschooling, I thought I was going to put together this beautiful, like, I'm going to create all of these things to give my children this amazing thing. I just buy curriculum that has an incredible Christian worldview built into it. And so that's been really helpful, especially now, because I'm more tired now than I used to be with homeschooling. I do really lean on the curriculum, and some of it, there are amazing curriculums out there that are like, we call it homeschooling in a box. Like your child watches a video and someone else teaches your children. That's how I do upper level math, and how actually all of our math curriculum is video based, because I am not passionate.
And is it Christian?
Either.
Is the math curriculum Christian?
The company is a Christian. It's not like every single question. It's Matthew C. So every single question is not Christian based. But so I think they can be used. I think Matthew C can be used in charters. But yeah, it's not necessarily like Christian based, but neither is baking cookies. And I think that's great math right there. So baking cookies, plain. And I think that's where we tend to overcomplicate things with homeschooling, is that when we are homeschooling, the most important thing is to remember it's not just academics. We're teaching our kids character, and sometimes that's when they are throwing a tantrum over a complicated math program or problem. And so those are the moments that really count. Our kids are watching as life is happening to us, and our 15 years plus of homeschooling, we've had family members die. We've had unexpected surgeries of family members or of ourselves. I had morning sickness, horrible morning sickness after homeschooling, because we started with our 2 school-age kids and a toddler, and then we added 2 more to our mix. And I'm telling you, morning sickness just seemed to get worse and worse for me each time. So luckily, I had a game plan for our homeschool, and I actually teach homeschool organization. I have a whole course on that and how you can kind of plan ahead for things. But I encourage families, no matter what curriculum you're using, you can add, like, even if you added Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe as a family read aloud together, and you talk about some of the nuances about how Aslan is actually a lot like Jesus. Maybe it's just Bible time at home. Another really wonderful way, and you can actually, especially with younger kids, you can plan your entire homeschool around a missionary story. There's some incredible books, like one of the ones I tell people to kind of start with is Hero Tales. And Hero Tales has short little snippets of missionary stories along with character qualities. So it'll say something like courage, and then it'll tell a story about George Mueller, and then at the end it'll define courage, and then it'll share a Bible verse that talks about courage, and then it'll ask questions. So it's a great way to get your kids talking, and you can have fun and make it history based by looking up what country he's in. Let's find England on a map. Oh, it says he traveled here. Where is that on a map? Maybe make some tea and be like, in England they drink tea. And like, there's lots of fun and easy ways to incorporate Christian values. But I love doing it with missionary stories, because missionary stories are showing God at work. And so that would be a really easy read aloud. So there's so many simple ways to incorporate our Christian faith into whatever we're doing. Even if it's a year that maybe you are using curriculum that doesn't necessarily have a Christian foundation, but you can pull things in by doing Bible in the morning and praying together, memorizing scripture together, reading something that there's all kinds of little books and stories. Like, I have a whole bunch of links to things on my website that have just great fictional books, great fiction or fiction-based books. So I'm sorry, nonfiction and fiction-based books that are really great stories that just really do help tell the story of what God's done through history.
That's awesome. And I can link in the show notes what I'll have you share, but rapid fire, like, what are some of your favorite curriculums? Doesn't matter the age level, just kind of rapid fire, and then we'll link them in the show notes for people.
Master Books has a lot of great curriculum all across the board. I am a big supporter of them. They have, in fact, some of their science books are so easy to go through on the side. Some of them are just like, I think it's called the God Design series that has beautiful pictures. So when my boys were young, they would just look through and get to kind of look at the stories. And if they were interested, then I would read it to them. But sometimes they're just looking at pictures. Then Bob Jones, if you're looking for, or Rebecca, are great like curriculum in a box things. Then there for older kids, and actually even some younger kids, we use Knotgrass, My Father's World. So those are some of the curriculums that have been really great. Apologia is a great science program. They tend to be a little more robust, which is why I tend to kind of lean, if somebody's looking to supplement, I would lean into maybe master books and some of their science books. And they have everything from like, I'm like, I should take you into my schoolroom where I keep everything. But they have like a guidebook for the aquarium. And so you can look up information, like if you go to the aquarium, you can look up information about this particular turtle or fish or whale or whatever it is you're looking at. They have a guidebook for zoo. And so when you're walking around, because when you go to the zoo or any kind of a museum, oftentimes it's like a bazillion years ago is when, like, so you have that. But this actually tells you the real story and what you want your kids to learn about when you have these. So like even having those on hand to enrich your time.
And what is that, master?
That would be master books. Master
okay.
books. Yes.
Okay.
And I can give you a link I can give you links to all these. But,
most
things, it's like
send me the links and then I'll
yeah.
Send them
like
to
Kristi
me
Clover,
and we will link them.
Yes, perfect. I would say, because everything's pretty much KristiClover.com / and then like master books or apologia. But
Amazing.
The other one that I love telling people about, because I know for a lot of people English is difficult, so I love all things IEW, which is the Institute for Excellence in Writing. There's a lot of different ones, but they are an exceptional company. I know all the people that run it really well, and they are amazing and have such a love and a passion for not just the Lord, but also just for teaching kids all things English related and language arts related. And so I love, the owner is Andrew Pujois, and he has 3 different levels, and those 3 different levels of writing program, he teaches them. And I love that. So I have my kids taught by Andrew Pujois for English, because sometimes I just don't have time for it. So when you are looking at kind of what you want to get done, maybe you are passionate about one subject and not others, then try to look for curriculum or supplemental curriculum that has a video, that has just other ways to help you along the road, because you don't have to teach everything to your kids. You can supplement it out. And a lot of times curriculum actually overlaps. So if you're using a history curriculum that has a lot of reading, that can be some of your reading. That can be some of your English. So if it has maybe a history curriculum that requires you to write for it, but not your writing. So we tend to try to overcomplicate things. And I think so many of us, I don't know about you, but I went through the public school system. And so like, I was so used to for so long of what that looked like, that it took me about 3 years to kind of figure out like, oh, this is my homeschool, and I can figure out kind of what we want to do and what we're not going to do this year and what we're going to tweak. So I keep it legal. The state of California does require me to teach certain subjects, so I do, but we just try to have a lot of fun with it and play games. Oh, and another thing that I would recommend is a lot of churches have links to, it's called Right Now Media. And Right Now Media is a really fun way to have great Christian kids shows. And I'm forgetting a few of them. I'll send you some links. So everybody needs to look at your show notes. But there are a few things that are just so fun for kids to watch. I mean, yes, you got Veggie Tales from back in the day, but they have some really cool Bible stories as well.
Yeah. We also love Yippee. We got Yippee not too long ago.
Ooh,
I don't know
yes.
if Yippee. Yeah.
Yes,
so we do
I've heard of
Yippee,
that.
and it has all the old school Veggie Tales, Superbook, which we love Superbook. It's got Bible Man. It's got different families that it would appear to be like YouTube, like it's families vlogging, but they're all Christians and they're baking or whatever. And so we've had, my kids love Yippee, but I'll have to check out Right Now Media.
That's so great. Yes. Yeah. No, but just there's things out there. I think that's the point. There are things out there that you can use that so often we forget, that like even doing something like that at night. I remember Right Now Media had one of the Bob Goff books. I think it was Love Does. And it had a quick little video series, and Bob Goff is hysterical. And even my younger kids loved it. They're like, let's watch Mr. Goff. And so we'd watch these videos, and he's talking all about how God's love should draw us out to do things. And so it was just really powerful. We forget that our kids can watch these things that maybe we would think is only for us, but they get a lot out of it too.
Yeah. That's so good. So if you were to, for those that don't know anything about homeschooling and they think that they have to recreate public school at home, which is a myth, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
What would you say for that new mom that might want to homeschool, is like homeschool curious, whet her appetite? How much time does she actually have to spend every day homeschooling? I know it varies based on age. As they get older, obviously more is going into it. But like roughly, what would you say the average homeschool family spends?
So younger kids, so let's say third grade and under, you're probably, kindergarten, have fun and read to them. Kindergarten is actually not mandated or mandatory in California, but read to your kids every day. But maybe a half an hour for kindergarten, just having fun, maybe an hour. And so we can get, like with my kids, we can get everything done between 9 and 12.
For all ages, even your older kids?
Not quite. For most of junior high, it depends on what curriculum we're using each year. But for most of my kids, we can, for the most part, get done between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Once they hit like 7th grade and into high school, then we start getting a little more serious and they're doing a little bit more. So sometimes they're starting a little earlier in the day and sometimes they might be finishing around 1. But I'm telling you, you would be shocked at how quickly kids can actually get things done. I don't think I've ever, unless people are being a little lazy and procrastinating on things, then it spills over, or unless there's a project, or maybe there's a long instructional video that they had to watch and it starts their day makes their day go a little bit longer. But I try to think ahead for those types of things. If I know the teacher's instruction video is going to be like, let's say half an hour for a particular subject, then I don't assign anything else for that day. So that would be their science. That would be their writing. That would be whatever it is. And then the next day they would start the project. So I do try to kind of teach my kids, especially my kids are almost pretty much 100% independent in what they can get done by high school. But even junior high, like Ashton's going into 8th grade, and by the end of this year, she was already doing most of her work on her own. But that's because I spend the summer really prepping and using my, again, homeschool organization course, and I get everything prepped in advance for them, so they just kind of have to do it. So it's all planned out. They just have to execute it, and it's so simple the way I set things up.
So I love, one of my favorite things is when I listen to a podcast and the person on the podcast is like, okay, walk me through your nighttime skincare routine. Like I want to hear step by step everything you're doing. So I want the homeschool version of that. Walk me through your morning routine. Like literally, like I get up, I make my coffee, I make the kids breakfast, like literally walk me through your morning.
Okay, so this is going to feel different though, because it's almost not fair, because you're going to be jealous. Because my kids the hardest time for homeschooling is when you have pre-readers in the house. So that means your kids can't do their work on their own. All of my kids can read efficiently, like they're very good at it. So my level of involvement is not as deep. So my schedule is I get up early because I have slept through the night, because I do not have babies anymore. So at this phase in my life, I can get up early. I go for a walk. I come home. I have coffee, and then I have my quiet time. My kids come downstairs usually the girls are usually down around 7:30. Wade, however, does not come downstairs on a school day because it's summer right now. But on a school day, Wade actually is funny. So he's my high schooler. He keeps all of his history and English books in his room. So he literally rolls over in bed and grabs his books, and he does all of his reading in bed. And then he like fills out any worksheets or anything like that he has to do. So he doesn't come downstairs until like 10 or 10:30, but he has already done the bulk of his work at that point. So that's the system he came up with, and I just roll with it because he's getting it done. Now, my girls are different. because Ashlyn will get up and she will have her quiet time and she will come down and get started right away. And so I make morning time, and I will say this, no matter what age or stage your kids are in, train them that our homeschool time is going to be between these hours. So in our house, because we had babies that napped around 9 o'clock, we just kind of 9 o'clock became our start time. So mom is available to help from 9 to 12. So when I had little kids in the house that I was juggling along with school age, pre-readers and the kids that needed a lot of help with school, I mean, I'm doing a lot more juggling during that season. So that's when so my morning would be, I usually didn't walk back then. Usually my walking was later in the day. So I can get a lot more done, especially when I was like, I can't get myself out of bed early because I've been up all night with a sick baby or whatever it was. But with my kids, I try to teach them that from 9 to 12 is when I'm helping. And so when I had 3 kids homeschooling and a baby, maybe or like a toddler and a baby, then I would get work together for one of them to kind of get started with, and then so that they can work independently, and then I would work with the next kid, get them going to work they could start doing independently. But we divided out our day to mom help work and independent work. Anything like copy work or a video they had to watch or anything that they could do on their own was typically either, if it was done during that time, it would be done and completed. But if it gets pushed off, then the afternoon is when they can complete things like reading a book or doing things that they could do on their own if our homeschool day was spilling over into that time frame. So I hope that makes sense. But that kind of helped us to create motivation for my kids to get things done. So that's how it kind of looked during that phase. But right now I'm available. So if you're getting up with me, doing all my things, I've got my shower, and I've got my coffee, my kids are down, and I'm helping the girls with their science. We usually start with history and science, and then we'll do any read alouds that we have together. Sometimes I'm lazy and I put it on Audible, and so they're doing that while maybe we're making breakfast or something. My kids do get their own breakfast. Sometimes we'll do pancakes or something fun together, but for the most part, we're making eggs. We've got chickens, so we're making eggs and toast or something like that. And then when noontime rolls around, again, I'm in a different phase. We're all making lunch or doing something fun during that time. So maybe we'll go outside and play. We've got a pool. So right now, pool is very active. And then in the afternoon, that is typically my time. So that's when, even when my kids were younger, if I would have nappers or quiet time. But now I'm in a phase where my kids can go and do their own thing. And that's when reading would often happen, is during that afternoon time. And that's when I started blogging. And that's when I started kind of doing things that kind of filled my cup and whatever hobbies it was that I had. And then I would usually start thinking about dinner around 4 o'clock if I hadn't already thrown something in a crock pot. And because if I wait any later than 4 o'clock, then things are frozen, and frozen things do not prepare themselves very well. So I am definitely big on having a game plan for dinner when you homeschool, because you're pretty fried by the end of the day. I also highly recommend doing a really good Google search or Chat GPT search on good, easy crock pot recipes, because there is nothing better than throwing stuff in your crock pot. And when people start asking about dinner, then you're like, go and lift the lid and you may see what is for dinner. So
I have never thought to use Chat GPT for a recipe. That's
Girlfriend,
brilliant.
I could rock your world with how you can use Chat GPT. It is wild, all the things you can do.
Is there like homeschool hacks with Chat GPT?
That's a great question. Probably. Yeah. I bet you can ask, what are some easy things to do for homeschool? But let me tell you this, because with ChatGPT, you can say, because I'll do this, I'll look in the freezer and be like, okay, I have ground beef and I have frozen green beans, and that's what we have. And so you can ask GPT, like, I have ground beef, I have frozen green beans, I have all the staples. That's important to say, all the staples. What can I make for dinner? And it will like give me 5 ideas. And then it'll 35 ideas. Let's say you don't like it, say, give me 5 more. And if you like 1 or 2 of them, say, okay, give me the recipe for that. And it'll give it to you. And they're usually pretty good. Yeah. And sometimes I'll be like, I have no idea. I need a veggie on the side. I've got broccoli. What can I do that's a kid-friendly way to make broccoli? And Chat will give me recipes. It's been rocking my world. It is so cool.
Wow. That is amazing.
Protein ideas.
I need to get on the Chat GPT train.
Oh my gosh.
That is so
good. Oh yeah, no, I mean,
That
it
is
has
so good.
totally changed everything. Cause I mean, I'm eating more protein now. And yeah, I ask it for great protein ideas for breakfast and smoothies and all that stuff. So we've loved it.
That's brilliant. Okay. And I will be going to ChatGPT as soon as our chat is over and figuring out what's for dinner. Okay,
What
so
is for dinner?
your days sound dreamy, but they are not realistic for,
And it's not every
I
day.
would say, like the audience that would be listening to this, my guess is has like elementary school children.
Yep.
So
That's
could
why
you
I'm like,
really
you don't want to know my
quickly-
schedule.
I know. I'm like, let's just erase that whole part because we're all green with envy now. Or maybe that's like the
Yes.
best ad for
I have made it.
KristiClover.com because this could be you someday. If you follow Kristi Clover's steps in 5 years, you will be drinking your coffee every morning and your kids will be reading quietly in the afternoon and you'll have time to yourself.
I know. No, okay, so get this. Like, I realized this the other day. I was totally laughing because I was like, I can't remember the last time I didn't drink my coffee hot. Because, like, how do you make iced coffee as a mom? You're just a mom and you forget it because you set it down somewhere, or you find it and you put it in the microwave, and later in the day, I'm like, there it is. Like, you're going a million miles an hour. But for people who are just starting out, I would honestly say, so my advice for moms who have at least one school age child and little kids, you always have to have a game plan for the little kids. We forget about that because they need our attention. And so I always start my days with the non-schoolers. So I start my day with them. I pour into them so that their little tanks are full. And so then I can get a few things done with the older kids. I've had to rethink what I do for curriculum. So I pick easy curriculum, not curriculum that's going to require me to do a lot of work. And then for my mornings, I would always try to get up early to have my quiet time, because there's really, even, and I have a ton of quiet time hacks, but even if you're just like meditating on a verse for the day, like maybe there's a verse that stood out to you, I will write it down on an index card and keep it in my pocket. Or I'll screenshot something from like a Bible app and just kind of have that with me so I can kind of be meditating on that. But getting in the Word, trying to get homeschooling done without Jesus, I don't know how people do it. And I had plenty of days where I skip it and I'm like, that was a lame day. But I find my attitude's better if I start with the Lord. But I also found that when I had little kids that there is some invisible tripwire somewhere in my house that if I wake up and think, hey, I'm going to sneak up early, my kids somehow know, and they wake up early too. But for those families, like, there are just seasons that are harder. So stick to the basics: reading, writing, and arithmetic. You will repeat science. You will repeat history. Maybe pick some read aloud books that you can get on Audible, but just give yourself a break and simplify everything when you've got little kids. If you have kids, I always tell people when I teach one of the workshops that I do at homeschool conventions is how to teach your bigs when you have littles in the house. Because that's always the question, is how in the heck do you get school done when you have all these little people who are like vying for your attention? And there's all kinds of little tips and tricks and things like that's too hard to go into everything. But a big one is to have like a bin that is just for school time that the little kids get to play with while you're getting school done with the big kids, but really trying to simplify. Like when I had morning sickness, like I was not getting a lot done. So I just kept things to a basic and didn't worry about these humongous curriculums that I'd spent money in or invested in. I'm like, we will do that next year, or we will start that in February. And the other big thing to remember that I like to point out to people is you don't have to do everything. So if you have a curriculum, and that is the beauty of private homeschooling, is I'm in control of that, is that like even in public school, they never finish the books. So you can give yourself grace on not having to finish a book. But I like to tell people of the power of the X when you're trying to get things done in your homeschool. Sometimes it's just, you're not going to learn about that we're going to skip over learning about insects and we're going to move on to frogs, whatever it is, or we're going to skip the French Indian War and cover that later. And we're going to just talk about this particular thing. So you can skip things. It is okay because you will circle back to it. And I also like to encourage people to remember that we had gaps in our education. So our kids might too. And that's okay. It is okay. Everyone's going to live in the end.
Along the lines of skipping things, this is actually like a personal question, and hopefully somebody else will find interest in it. I'm really fascinated by the idea of unschooling And I don't know if I have all of my like facts right about unschooling, and I don't want to get into a huge can of worms about that. But I think about my oldest, Luke. My husband owns his own business, and Luke's dream is to work for my husband and to like take over the business. He like begs to go to work with dad every day. And if I were to guess, even at 8 years old, I would say there's a very high likelihood that he will end up taking over the business. They manufacture kids' toys. So Luke will never have a need to learn chemistry. He will never have a need to like understand some of those things. But I was also a public school child. So I'm like, but he has to take high school chemistry. Does he have to take high school chemistry if he's not going to be a chemist?
No. So state of California, the requirements for graduation, you would be shocked if you saw it. And so I try to pick things that because my poor oldest child, poor Grant, he did take chemistry, he did take physics, and he did take biology. All of my kids so far have taken biology. And then I've gotten a little bit more flexible. So Wade took physics this year. Blake, before he graduated, he took a nutrition class because he was really into nutrition. So you can find sciences that are more appealing to them. They do in high school. So California California requirements for graduation is that they have 2 sciences under their belt. If your child is going to be college bound, so if they're going straight into a 4-year university from your high school or from your homeschool, then they might need 3 years of science. You would just need to, if there's like a particular school, I think UC schools are different than state schools. So every school's a little different. So you'd want to have a game plan like, does this college require 4 years of science? And so then you can adjust and adapt that way. Here's an amazing hack that we learned very early is that if your kid goes straight from your homeschool, so we did dual enrollment at our local junior college starting when our kids were 15. Now they actually open it up and you can start earlier. But our oldest, a year after he graduated from our homeschool, was able to complete his AA at the junior college because we had done dual enrollment. He started taking classes when he was in high school, so he's starting to get college credit.
Wow.
So he ended up with an AA. Now, if your kid has an AA from a junior college, then you don't need to worry about what your high school transcript says, so like as far as having this many sciences and this many things. So you can graduate them with even the minimum amount that's required for high school graduation, complete an AA program, and then transfer into a 4-year college. So that is one way to do it. Another way to do it, I can rock your world. The other way is some colleges, my oldest did graduate from Liberty University. He did it online. I would make everyone faint if they knew how little we paid for his education because it's just unheard of. But Liberty at this stage will take 90 units. They will take 90 units transferred in, and they only require 120 units, which means you're only paying for 1 year of college because you can take junior college classes and transfer them. You can take CLEP tests and transfer them. And so that's what we're doing with Wade this year, is that he is taking CLEP tests. And the other thing I want to talk to that's really important based on what you just said about your son, that is the best thing about homeschooling, and especially with private homeschooling, because I don't have to bend to what any other school says my kid has to learn. I have designed my schools, our kids' education around what my kids' strengths are and even what their weaknesses are. So our oldest, very early, we could see that he had a love for language. He could read. I didn't have to tell him to go read. I was like, okay, can you please put the book down? Engage, like eye contact. He loved reading. He loved writing. By the time he was 17, he had written 2 novels on his own. So did we do a formal writing class? No, the kid is writing a novel. That counted towards his English. He was reading 100 books a year at that time. That counted as English. So what happens often is when our kids are in a more traditional school setting is that they have to complete this work in order to check the boxes that are required. And then if they have that interest, they're tired. And so he may not have had time to work on his book or to read all those extra books that he wanted to read. And then our second is a professional photographer, as I mentioned. So for him, what was so cool is that we saw very early on that he really enjoyed taking photos. So guess what we learned about? We were able to find people that were great photographers, and they taught him the nuances. And I should be able to say all the technical terms that he learned. I don't know them. And we did field trips and went and got to see different photography studios. And he had an opportunity to meet with this world famous photographer. And then I was able to talk to a photographer friend, and he shadowed him and then ended up actually working with him and then has launched off. So for Blake, college didn't need to happen. The guy is now 21 and has a thriving photography business, and he didn't need to go to college. He has a little bit of college credit because we did the dual enrollment, but he does not. So I think that's just different, is we have to think about what are our child's goals.
Yeah.
So for your son, you could do so many fun things. I mean, especially at this age, you could do like read all these fun books. I mean, I automatically think of Santa things, not that as a Christian you want to do that, but like you can do so many fun, like toy making things. And so maybe like finding some of those little nuances, teach him entrepreneurship, teach him all these things.
He's passionate about being an entrepreneur. Like so one of my husband's like big licenses is they do a lot with Squishmallow. I don't know if Squishmallows.
Oh, yes.
But they're like the really squishy stuffed animals. And last year at his co-op or the enrichment program that he goes to, I didn't realize it, but he had like stuffed his backpack full of Squishmallows and he was selling them on campus. So he like, at a young age, an entrepreneur wanting to make money, coming up with things to sell. And I'm like, there are so many things that we could teach him. We could teach him how to be writing code to create a website, or how to use Excel, and all these things that are tools that he would need to know as a business owner. Chemistry is not the need for him.
Yeah. I mean, but then I also, just to push you in this, like, he can also hire people who know code, right? Like I am an entrepreneur. True. I don't know code. I hire people if I need code.
Of like, if he had interest in those things.
Yes, but I would focus on, so what, he's obviously got some marketing skills there. He's got some drive. Fan that flame. Let him do that. Look for different things. Read books and stories. I would start looking at different stories of all these successful people that have done this type of thing. In fact, the Scott brothers, the Property Brothers, they have I'm like, they have a book, but you'd probably like, I let my kids listen to part of it, but part of it they get into like the relationships that they had during their coming up of fame and things like that. But they have some fascinating stories about how they kind of started off, and they were entrepreneurs. Guy Fieri had an amazing story of how he became a famous chef. I mean, all of these entrepreneurs and people who are gifted at what they're doing, they have these crazy backstories. So maybe watching Shark Tank and following some different things. So there's just so many things you can do to just help your kids develop it. I mean, like, I forget, is it like 10,000 hours to become an expert at something, or 100,000 hours? I forget what it is. But like, you can do that when you homeschool. You can tailor your child's time. And that's the beautiful thing about homeschooling, is you have this thing called time, because you're not just sitting in class and you're not having to check all these boxes. So I never understood what my friend meant until years later, when I had a lot more friends doing charter, was watching how much time it took for them to get things done, because they had to check these boxes to get things done, because they had to turn in their work every 6 weeks. So it's just different. And I know when you and I have talked, you said that you love the accountability that comes with it. But honestly, that's the thing that I think we get so caught up on, is that when we're used to like, there's boxes that have to be checked, we forget that there is just, homeschooling has become a lifestyle for us. So I have stopped worrying about like, I have to get this done, I have to get this done. Like, we are naturally educating our kids because we're so passionate about it. Do I have things that I require my kids to get done? Yes, I do. And that's why I plan ahead. And so part of like, it just takes good planning and knowing how to implement that planning. And that's all it takes. And that's the accountability. So again, like I have a crate system that's just, it's natural accountability. Like you have to work your way through what work I put together for my kids to get done at the beginning of the year. And so there's little nuances like that. There are ways to weave essentially accountability to get work done into your school days. But at the same time, you want that flexibility and that extra time that comes with not having to worry about all these boxes that have to get filled in.
Yeah, I love that. So for the mom who's listening, that is enjoying our conversation, is fascinated by it, but maybe she's a single mom and has to work, or for whatever reason, she's working and can't be home to homeschool her children and just throws in the towel. I said, I'll never homeschool. I just can't do it. Can those people homeschool?
Absolutely. It's funny. I did a Prager University interview about this, and I forget because my audience is so kind. But when you have somebody like a Prager University, their audience is not so kind because they have all the people that come in, like the trolls that come in. And so like what people were saying was, I was like, hey, you're taking what I said out of context. But yes, you can absolutely have a full-time job and homeschool. Caveat there is you need a plan. You need to organize. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that's actually a lot of people who use my homeschool organization course. They use it because they know they need a game plan. It's not like you can go off to work and like leave your small children at home. That doesn't work. But like what you're doing, you have a tutor. There are different, like a lot of times people will have like a grandma or someone else coming over and helping with getting schoolwork done. But the whole idea is that you have a game plan. So that's the key, is if you are working, you need a game plan. So you need to know what they're supposed to be getting done each week and how are you making sure that they're getting things done? How are they being educated? So again, there's wonderful curriculum that has video-based educating. So they have teachers actually teaching things. I actually got to go and tour Bob Jones' facility, and it was like really cool to see like all the sets they had for all the different subjects. So it was really neat. So they're one that when I think of video-based education, they're one that comes to mind. But there are so many great things out there that you can use there's just a lot of options that we never had. Like I was homeschooling 20 years ago, but 20, 30 years ago, like there was like 3 choices. But now there's just so much out there. So if you are working full time, you just have to be very strategic with your plan, strategic with your curriculum, and strategic with your help. There are people who definitely are coming home and finishing some of the school. But I mean, like if you travel for work, can you leave your kids at home? Like you need a game plan. Like there are ways, but there are ways. If there's a will, there's a way. And so I just want to encourage people, like there really is a way to get homeschooling done. And worst case, try it for a year, see how it goes. But don't forget to ask for help and to reach out. There are organizations, again, like HSLDA, and that's Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to like help. I can't find a way to do this. They are very familiar with all the different types of curriculum out there. And also here in California, we have CHIA, which is the Christian Home Educators Association, and they have a hotline you can call if you need help and want to get tips and advice. And then there's a bazillion blogs out there like my own that have a lot of different resources on how to help people homeschool sanity and get things done that need to get done, but offer you some flexibility. And I think, again, that's the shocking thing, is that school should not be taking 6 hours. Maybe your junior, senior year of high school. But even then, like it should not take that many hours to get your homeschool done.
Does your crate system that you've mentioned a couple of times, is that part of your homeschool organization course? Do you cover that?
Yes. Oh yeah.
So then tell us about the homeschool organization course. Tell us where everyone can find you, and we'll wrap up from there.
Yes. So everybody can find me at kristiclover.com. My homeschool organization course is linked there. But you can find that at homeschoolorganization.com. But I think, like, I actually right now have a fun little freebie for anyone interested in homeschooling. And so if you do kristiclover.com/reset, I have a homeschool reset that is just a free 3-day reset. And I kind of help people walk through mindset, through your space, and through your time. So it's a fun little freebie to kind of give people a taste of kind of what I do and what I help with. But with homeschool organization, I'm big on helping people simplify. Like, I don't want you overdoing it. I want you to look for the gaps in what you're planning to do, and I want you to look for the overlap. And so I have videos that talk about how to do that and how to plan out your year. I approach things differently. One of the biggest things that if you really want to complicate your homeschool, use a traditional teacher planner. you will have a mountain of eraser dust and tons of frustration a few weeks in, because it never goes according to plan. And then you're going to feel behind, and you're not going to know which page you're actually on, because on history, you're up to date. On math, you're behind because it was hard. And so that's why I try to teach people how to plan by week. And I use the crate system, and I have techniques within the crate system on how to do that and how to keep all of your work in one spot. So if you are a minimalist, you'll love it. If you're not, you'll still love it, but you can just have more stuff everywhere else. But
I desire to be a minimalist.
Right.
I am not a minimalist, but my heart's desire is to be one.
Yes. Have you heard of, I think what did she go by? The Nester. Michaelin Smith is, I think she's called the Nester, but she's called the Cozy Minimalist. And I love that, because I'm like, that's it. It's like simplified, but cozy. So
yes.
Yeah, I love her stuff. But yeah, like, you can be a minimalist if you want to be. Homeschooling definitely makes it a little bit more difficult, because you tend to bring in more stuff. There's a lot more papers, and that's just part of it, is that having a game plan of what do you do with all the books? What do you do with all the papers? And what do you do with all the papers when you're done? Just having systems in place. And that's, I think, the thing that people forget about. People think, oh, I'll figure it out. But if you actually went to someone like me who's been homeschooling for so long and has really figured out a tried and true method of how to do it, then I would encourage you in that. Yeah. So that's my passion. I love simplifying homeschooling. I don't want people to have excuses of why they can't homeschool. I want to make it simple. I want to encourage them that they really can do this crazy thing called homeschooling.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kristi. You inspire me, and you are such a wealth of knowledge on this topic. So thank you for your time and for coming on the show.
Of course. It was so fun. Thank you for having me.